Most men don't love women. They love how being loved makes them feel. Schopenhauer. He smiles. He says the right things. He listens closely. He nods, performs, adjusts. And yet, it's not love driving him. It's fear. The fear of not being good enough unless she sees him. The fear that without her validation, he vanishes. Schopenhauer understood this. Much of what we call love is performance. It's not connection. It's calculation. It's not presence. It's pressure. You shape yourself into what you think she wants, and in the process, you disappear. Inner. This video, we dive into Schopenhauer's quiet, revealing truth about the men who perform to be loved. The men who confuse approval for intimacy, who chase affection not because they want to give, but because they need to feel seen. You'll learn how this pattern poisons your masculinity, erodes your identity, and sabotages real connection before it even begins. Subscribe if you're done performing for love and ready to live from truth. Like and comment if you've ever tried to impress someone and lost yourself in the process. It starts subtle. You don't even notice when it begins. You adjust your tone, you soften your posture. You craft your words not to express truth, but to manufacture acceptance. And it feels natural, normal even. Because most men were taught, consciously or not, that love is something you earn through performance, that if you smile enough, agree enough, show enough, she will choose you. And when she does, her choice won't just be about the relationship. It'll be proof that you're enough. Schopenhauer would say, this isn't love, it's survival. The will disguises itself as affection. You don't want her. You want what her validation does to your fractured identity. You crave her gaze not because you're grounded in connection, but because her approval patches the emptiness you refuse to face. So you perform. You become charming, adaptable, appealing. But it's not real. It's not you. It's a version of you tailored to avoid rejection and secure belonging. And the tragedy, the more you perform, the less she feels you, the less magnetic you become. Women are wired to feel presence, and presence cannot coexist with performance. She senses the subtle dishonesty, the way you edit yourself to fit her expectation, and whether she consciously realizes it or not, something inside her disconnects. She loses trust, not because you lied overtly, but because you withheld your truth beneath layers of invisible negotiation. This is the quiet hell most men live in, a constant internal negotiation. What should I say to be liked? Instead of, what is true for me right now? Every time you adjust yourself to win her approval, you send yourself the same message, I am not enough as I am. And repetition of that message doesn't just shape behavior, it forges identity. You become a man who doesn't trust his own presence to be sufficient, a man whose confidence depends on external confirmation. Schopenhauer warned, the will to be desired corrupts the ability to connect, because connection requires exposure, vulnerability, standing in the open, unmasked, unscripted. But the man who performs cannot do that. His focus is always split, half on the moment, half on managing perception, half present, half pretending. And in that split he loses himself. And worse, he trains her not to trust him. Because intuitively, every woman knows, if he's not being fully real, I can't fully relax here. And here's the most brutal truth of all, she cannot save you from this. Even if she chooses you, it doesn't heal the wound, because what you wanted wasn't love. It was permission to believe you were finally enough. But no one can give you that, especially not her. And the more you try to get it from her, the more suffocating your presence becomes. Not because you're bad, but because you've outsourced the job of self-respect to someone who was never meant to carry it. Every compliment you fish for, every moment you lean in hoping she notices, every time you hold back what you really want to say because you're afraid it might break the image, you're not moving toward connection. You're moving toward safety. Schopenhauer would call it the will's desperate game of self-illusion. You think you want her, but you don't. You want the feeling that being wanted by her temporarily gives you, and that's a drug. It soothes you for a moment, and then it disappears. This is why the high of early attraction feels so intoxicating. When she shows interest, it's not just flattering, it's medicinal. It patches the deep ache of not feeling seen, not feeling enough, not knowing how to validate yourself without her gaze acting as a mirror. But that mirror is fragile. One look away, one delayed reply, one sign of disinterest. And suddenly the man collapses, not because she left, but because her attention was the scaffolding propping up his entire sense of self. This is the hidden reason men tolerate disrespect. It's why they stay in dead conversations. It's why they laugh at jokes that aren't funny. Why they agree when they want to disagree. Because the risk of losing the illusion of being wanted feels more terrifying than the discomfort of betraying their own truth. And in that subtle, daily self-betrayal, the man trains his nervous system to fear honesty, to equate truth with loneliness, to associate authenticity with abandonment. Schopenhauer would say this is suffering by consent. You aren't suffering because of her. You're suffering because you've handed her the keys to your self-worth. And no matter how beautiful she is, no matter how magnetic, no matter how kind, she cannot carry that weight for you. And deep down she knows it. Which is why the more you ask for that unspoken permission to feel worthy, the more emotionally repelling you become. And here's the paradox. The very thing you fear, losing her respect, is the inevitable result of the performance. Because women don't fall in love with men who perform for approval. They're drawn to men who approve of themselves first, men who are willing to risk disapproval for the sake of alignment, for the sake of reality, for the sake of being felt, over being liked. But the performer can't do that. He's trapped in a loop. Every silence from her feels like danger. Every boundary feels like rejection. Every emotional distance feels like punishment. And instead of stepping back, breathing, and returning to his center, he doubles down. He performs harder, smiles wider, bends further, hoping that if he's good enough, patient enough, pleasing enough, he'll finally earn the right to feel like enough. But Schopenhauer would say, you don't earn that right. You declare it. Here's the brutal reality Schopenhauer would confront you with. No matter how much she admires you, no matter how much she likes you, desires you, praises you, it can never fix the war you're fighting inside yourself. Because the problem was never her approval. It was the fact that you needed it in the first place. And that need, that quiet, suffocating need, poisons everything. It distorts your presence. It clouds your judgment. It keeps you trapped in a never-ending audition for a role no man should ever apply for. You think if you say it right, smile right, hold back the messy truth, soften the edges, you'll finally be enough for her. But Schopenhauer would argue, the second you believe that your worth is negotiable, that it depends on external validation, you've already abandoned yourself. You're no longer building a relationship. You're building a stage. And you're performing on it, hoping the audience, her, claps loud enough to drown out the voice inside you that keeps whispering, you're not enough. And this is the reason why even when things go well, when she seems interested, affectionate, engaged, you still feel unsettled. You still feel anxious, because deep down, you know, she's not responding to the real you. She's responding to the version of you that you think she wants. And even if she chooses that version, it doesn't satisfy you. Because the part of you that knows you've been performing knows that it's all conditional. It knows that if you were fully yourself, unscripted, unfiltered, she might not stay. And that fear haunts you. This is the quiet suffering most men never speak about, the emptiness that grows not from rejection, but from conditional acceptance, from being liked for who you're pretending to be. And this is why the need for approval never ends. It feeds on itself. The more you perform, the more disconnected you feel. The more disconnected you feel, the more you perform. A slow erosion of authenticity, a quiet suffocation of your own identity. Schopenhauer would say, the will to be validated is infinite. No amount of external approval ever satisfies it, because the hunger isn't for her affection, it's for your own self-acceptance. And until that is resolved, every interaction becomes a negotiation, a transaction where you trade pieces of your truth for fragments of her attention. But those fragments are never enough, and they never will be, because what you actually crave cannot be given by her. It can only be reclaimed by you. There's something every man must understand, something Schopenhauer saw with brutal clarity. The more you perform for her, the less she trusts you. Not because you're untrustworthy in a moral sense, but because, on an intuitive level, women are biologically wired to detect incongruence. She may not consciously know what feels off. She may not articulate it, but she feels it. In her body, in the micro-moments, in the subtle tension behind your smile. She feels the invisible gap between what you're saying and what you're actually feeling. She feels the way your words are shaped not by truth, but by anticipation of her reaction. She notices the hesitation before you speak, the pause where you check, is this what will keep me safe? Is this what will keep her interested? And in that moment, trust erodes. Not because of what you said, but because of what you withheld. This is the paradox that destroys the performer. He believes that by being agreeable, pleasing, accommodating, he's earning her affection, but in reality, he's triggering her deepest biological warning system, the one that whispers, something isn't right here, he's not fully grounded, he's not fully safe. And it's true, because a man who abandons his own truth to win someone else's approval is by definition unstable. He's reactive, not sovereign. Pleasing, not present. Managed, not real. And the more you do this, the more you calibrate your being to her. Expectations. The more exhausted you become. You feel drained after every interaction, not because of her, but because of the mental labor of suppressing your instincts, editing your desires, shrinking your edges. You leave the conversation with a smile on your face, but an ache in your chest. The ache of knowing, she met me, but she didn't really meet me, because I didn't let her. Schopenhauer would call this a form of spiritual self-mutilation, a slow death by self-abandonment. And the worst part? It doesn't even work, because the very thing you're afraid of, her pulling away, is the inevitable consequence of the performance itself. She doesn't pull away because you were too much. She pulls away because you weren't enough of yourself, because you were so busy trying to be what you thought she wanted that the real you never showed up. And here's the most devastating truth. She can't even miss the real you because she never got to meet him. You never gave her the chance. You were too busy hiding, too busy polishing, too busy perfecting a version of yourself that was never real to begin with. And Schopenhauer would say, there is no suffering greater than the suffering of the man who realizes he was rejected, not for who he is, but for the mask he chose to wear. There is a moment, quiet, terrifying, but liberating, when a man realizes the truth Schopenhauer pointed to relentlessly. You must be willing to lose her, to ever truly find yourself. As long as your presence, your confidence, your sense of self is contingent on how she reacts to you, you are not free. You are not whole. You are not sovereign. You are a puppet pulled by the invisible strings of approval and rejection, and no matter how beautiful the puppet show looks, it's not life, it's not love. It's survival masquerading as connection. This is the shift that terrifies most men. The realization that being fully yourself, unscripted, unpolished, unperformed, means risking her disapproval. It means risking that she walks away. It means risking that the version of you she was drawn to was never actually you, but it's the only path forward, because anything else isn't real. Anything else is a contract built on lies neither of you can sustain. And here's the paradox. The moment you let go, the moment you decide that being chosen isn't worth abandoning yourself, the energy shifts. Not just internally, but externally. She feels it. The need evaporates, the grasping dissolves, the pressure breaks. You no longer approach her as a man asking for permission to exist. You approach her as a man already anchored in his own existence. And that presence, calm, unattached, unapologetically whole, is magnetic in a way performance could never be. But this shift isn't about her. It was never about her. It's about you. It's about refusing to abandon yourself for anyone ever again. It's about understanding that the only validation that holds is the validation you give yourself when you choose to stand as you are. Unhidden, unmasked, unworried about how the world receives you. Schopenhauer would say the will seeks satisfaction from the outside. But satisfaction never arrives, Because the hunger was never external. The woman was never the solution. Her gaze was never the cure. Her acceptance was never the medicine. The answer was, and always will be, the man who can look in the mirror. Can say, if being fully me means losing her, then I choose me. And that man, he doesn't lose because he's already won. You thought if you could just say the right thing, hold the right posture, master the perfect smile, and that she would choose you, that her approval would finally silence the voice that's haunted you for years, the voice whispering, you're not enough. You thought that if she saw you as desirable, valuable, worthy, then maybe you could finally believe it yourself. But Schopenhauer would tell you the truth you've spent your entire life avoiding. It was never about her. It was never her job. And it never could be. Because the real tragedy isn't that you wanted her. It's that you needed her to give you what you refused to give yourself: validation, approval, permission to exist fully. And in that need, you became something less than yourself. You became agreeable. You became careful. You became a man who learned to survive, not by standing in his truth, but by hiding behind whatever mask the moment demanded. You stopped showing up as you, and you started showing up as a performance. But the cruelest part, even when it worked, she smiled when she stayed, when she said the words you were desperate to hear, it never actually worked. Because deep down you knew the man she was responding to wasn't entirely real. You knew the image you projected wasn't fully honest, and so her affection felt hollow, not because she was wrong, but because you were never fully there to receive it. You gave her an avatar, a character, a version of you shaped by fear, and no matter how much she liked him, you hated him. Because he wasn't you. This is the invisible suffering of the modern man, the quiet despair of being wanted for the mask, and knowing that if the mask slips, the love might vanish. But here's the truth that shatters the entire illusion. The mask was never protecting you. It was suffocating you. And the love that could be taken away because you were finally honest was never love to begin with. It was conditional acceptance. It was approval leased on the condition that you remain pleasing, agreeable, convenient. Schopenhauer would say, the will's hunger for approval is infinite and infinitely futile, because no amount of external validation can heal the wound created by self-abandonment. The only cure is the radical, terrifying, liberating decision to choose yourself, fully, loudly, without apology, without performance, without waiting for someone else to nod in approval, before you believe you have the right to exist as you are. And the moment you choose that, the moment you decide, I will not shrink for anyone, I will not filter my truth, I will not negotiate my presence to avoid discomfort, something shifts, something permanent. You stop being a man who hopes to be chosen, and you become a man who chooses. You choose alignment over approval, reality over fantasy, truth over comfort. And ironically, that's when the world starts responding differently, because the man who no longer asks for permission to be here radiates the kind of presence that cannot be ignored. So let her walk away if she must. Let her misunderstand you if she will. Let her disapprove, disconnect, or choose someone else, because none of that defines you. What defines you is whether you were willing to show up as yourself, whether you were willing to risk being rejected for being real rather than being accepted for being a lie. And the man who makes that choice doesn't lose, ever, because even if the world rejects him, he no longer rejects himself. Subscribe if you're done performing and ready to reclaim the man you were before the world taught you to hide. Like and comment if you've ever felt the quiet exhaustion of being wanted for who you're not, and you're finally ready to let it die. Because when you stop performing for love, and you don't just reclaim your presence, you reclaim your power, and no one can take that from you again.